Welcome back. This is still Breakfast Daily on City TV. If you're just joining us, we're also celebrating Heritage Month on City.
Yep.
And do make sure that you follow all the conversations with that hashtag on social media. We want to hear from you today as well. Our WhatsApp number is on the screen. Please make sure that you reach out. But now it's time to talk health. And our guest today is Dr. Kelvin Owusu. He's the head of occupational health and wellness at the Client Health Center and or Client Health International. And what we're talking about today is occupational health. And occupational health sets within the life of the Ghanaian, the unique occupational hazards that we face. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning. You
How
guys
are
are
you
looking
doing?
fabulous.
Thank you. So are you.
And happy International Day to Dr. Annie Owusu.
Yes.
Definitely,
Yes.
definitely,
A lot of people
definitely.
don't know that Dr. Owusu has a powerful woman in his house.
Oh, yes.
You know, pediatrician extraordinaire.
Powerful,
One day
powerful
the
pillar.
two of you have to tell us how you survive being married to each other as doctors. You have kids, so you need to tell us how it's done.
We will do that. Just set the date, we'll be here.
We'll do that. I'll take you up on it. Or I'll
Definitely.
call Annie herself. How are you doing?
Very well, very well,
Okay.
very well.
So occupational health, let's get right into it. What does that even mean?
Okay, so you know how health is defined as the complete physical, social, and mental well-being, and not just the absence of ill health or ailments. In occupational health, we say the same thing, targeted towards the worker.
Okay.
So that the worker can continue to be in good health whilst they go about their occupation.
Okay.
Basically, that's what occupational health is talking about. And you mentioned that in the Ghanaian setting. I mean, and I was smiling because it's one of the things that we don't talk about enough, we don't practice enough of. And so a lot of people are walking around with diseases or conditions that they have picked up as a result of the job, the line of work they are involved in. And so that's why it's important that we talk about it now. We start talking about it more now, so that the awareness is created and people will become. Maybe employers are not aware that they have to do things for their health, their workers. So at least as we talk about it, they become aware, and they can then begin to put measures in place to protect the health of their workers. You see, because a healthy worker is a productive worker.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you're basically suggesting that your job can kill you.
Oh yes.
Hey.
You see, I mean, the work you do would definitely have an effect on you, right? Now, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to minimize that effect. The negative effects that your job will have on you. We are trying to minimize it or slow down the rate of deterioration. It's because the mere fact that you are aging itself, there's going to be some deterioration. Even if you are just sitting at home and watching TV, there'll be deterioration in your body, right? But now you are out there working.
Exactly.
Whether it's a mental work, physical work, I mean, there's some level of exertion on your part. And so depending on which line of work you are exerting towards, or your exertion is directed towards, or which parts of your body is the recipient of that exertional force, if there's a term like that, you are going to have effects. It's going to impact that part.
Okay.
So we need to find out, first of all, what kind of impact the job you are doing can have on you as a person, because everybody is different. So we have a general picture, but you specifically, how can this line of work impact you, right? And so that's one aspect of occupational health. And then when the thing actually does happen, how can we mitigate against it? So that's also another component of occupational health.
Okay, so Doc, let's talk about some examples
Okay.
of the things you describe. I think a lot of the time when we think of occupational hazards, occupational health, we think, okay, if I'm a construction worker,
Right.
for example,
Yeah.
and a bucket falls on my head, then we are talking about occupational health and hazards.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, it's much more than that.
It's much bigger.
Right.
I mean, those ones
So-
are because their line of work is more physical. It's easier to see the effect. I mean, if a head porter, right, a head porter, and I've actually seen a case like that, a head porter carrying a load.
What we call the kayayi.
Kayayi, right?
Kayayi.
And then there was some incident, she was carrying the load, and there happened to be an altercation, right? So somebody kind of pushed there, and then the load shifted a bit. She ended up in my emergency room
That's
with
her
a
neck.
yes, with what you call a broken neck.
Wow.
So one of the vertebrae had shifted and impinged on the spinal cord. She was paralyzed for life. Eventually, she died. I mean, unfortunately, but that's actually a much more catastrophic outcome as a result of her occupation. Of course, it's not fun being a head porter, but it was her occupation, right? And it killed her.
Yeah.
But when we look at the broader picture, when we go to corporate Ghana, for instance, people don't realize this, but if you look at the rate of obesity, it's highest amongst corporate Ghana and market women.
Wow.
And the common thing between these two is that they are all sitting down.
Okay.
They spend most of their day sitting down.
Okay.
And then they tend to get home late because of traffic. So they spend their nights, they eat, and they immediately go to bed because they are tired. So these two, late night eating, sedentary kind of work, put together obesity. So you realize that obesity's cousins are also common in this group of people. And the cousins are diabetes type 2 and then hypertension,
Right.
you see. So now when it comes to occupational health, we know these things already. We know that these things are associated with corporate kind of work. Now, how does occupational health come in to intervene? First of all, there's something called pre-employment health check that every organization should prioritize, because much as we know that there's a link between corporate work and obesity, how do we know that the person you are employing was not already obese? Or how do we know that the person you're employing does not have other pre-existing conditions that are going to yes, that are going to make him or her obese. So that in other words, what I'm saying is that pre-employment medical actually protects the two parties, the new employee and the employer, so that later on, after the employee has worked for about 5 years, they won't come and say that I've developed this back pain because of the work I was doing.
Yeah.
When in actual sense, the person came to the office
with the
problem already.
Okay.
You know, and so we need to know the status of that individual before you engage him or her. So that's why pre-employment is very, very, very important. Unfortunately, if I'm to take a wild guess, I mean less than 10% of companies actually do pre-employment medicals, you know. And if we look far ahead, I mean, you mentioned people injuring themselves. There's something called workman's compensation, right? Which is something that it's instituted in the labor law, that if somebody gets injured on the job or even dies on the job, somebody is supposed to pay some form of compensation depending on the degree of injury. But if there's no record of what the person's status was before they were employed, how do you genuinely prove that this injury was solely as a result of the work I'm doing? So in that regard, it protects the employee as well, so that I can prove that when I came to work for you 5 years ago, I didn't have this problem. After 5 years of working for you, I've developed that problem. So it has to be the environment I'm working with here, you see. But because we don't have these laid down principles or protocols, it always becomes your word against my word, and then tussle. Most employees are at the shorter end of the stick, so they are sacked or they are fired without any compensation.
Because the company is bigger than you.
Exactly.
Right?
But occupational health is there to protect the employee in that regard, and also the employer as well, because if the condition was there already, then well, it's not my fault. It's your predisposition. You should have done something about it, or you should have followed the instructions given by the agency that did the certification. So pre-employment is very, very important. Then in the course of the employment too, or in the course of the life of the individual with the company, we see this more often in the mining companies. They are quite strict on it, because I mean, as part of their regulation, they are supposed to ensure that every year, or at least every 2 years, there's medical checks to make sure that their staff are still in good health.
They're exposed to so many chemicals.
Exactly,
and whatnot.
exactly. Especially, I mean, the inhalation, smoke, dust, whatever. So X-rays are all important to see the state, so that if somebody who was originally employed to, let's say, I mean, just for want of an example, to go into the pits, right, is suddenly developing chest complications. That person cannot go into the pits anymore. But you can't fire him, because I mean, it's your fault he's developed this. So instead of keeping him in the pits, you can move into another aspect.
Maybe administration.
Exactly, where he will not be exposed to so many toxins, you see. So the annual or routine medical checks is there to also monitor the employees, so that if there's anything that needs intervention, it is put in place. Then there's also the exit medicals. When the person is finally maybe retiring, you want to also do an exit medical to see what the impact of the years of service has caused him or her, so that if there's a need to put some measures in place to take care of that person following the exit from the company, it's also done. So occupational health, in a nutshell, actually is protective, and we must all invest into it, because it's protective. I don't know how else to explain it.
I have a question for you. Today is International Women's Day,
Yes.
so I think it's one in order. We're seeing increasingly a lot of career women, and these career women seem to be having challenges conceiving. I don't know if there's a correlation. I'm just telling you what I have observed.
Yes.
So trouble conceiving, trouble keeping pregnancy, so a lot of them are miscarrying. Is there any connection?
So this is a very difficult question to answer, because there are so many factors at play. But one key thing that we observe is that when education, let's start from education, because the girl child is being educated to a higher degree now than before. Most women are starting their families at a later age.
Right.
Now, when you are starting your family at a later age, okay, let me now take it back again. When a woman begins to have her period, it's the same eggs that she has had from birth that has been stored and then starts being released every month. So to the lay person, imagine your eggs are 30, as they're as old as you are. So the older you are when you now start giving birth, the eggs are getting weaker, which is why a woman of, let's say, 35 years coming to a hospital, when we define infertility, age is a critical factor. Usually we say that 1 year of unprotected sex. But if this woman is 35 and beyond, you are not going to wait for 1 year because of what I just explained, because the eggs are getting finished, in quotes. So you want to make sure that you can intervene as soon as possible. So because of education and late start of family life and stress, all these things come together to make it a bit more difficult for career women to conceive, which is why you must plan. You see, because if you intend to start a family, you must find a way to, minimize the stress you are dealing with, because stress hormones inhibit, they actually prevent pregnancy, because you can't handle pregnancy if you are stressed.
Wow.
So the stress hormone, adrenaline, noradrenaline, actually prevents the sex hormones and the fertility hormones. They actually suppress them. Okay. So you need to deal with the stress so that you can free the fertility hormones to actually do what needs to be done. And you actually notice this in girls as well. Every time you either start a new school or it's exam time, your
cycle changes.
Exactly. You actually notice a change in your cycle.
The stress factor.
Yeah.
The stress factor.
Or exams are coming. Yeah. You can't relate. You can't relate. Of course, on a certain level, you have a daughter, you have sisters.
But similar thing happens in men as well. I mean, the classical example is when you are broke. When you are broke, your performance, your libido is actually non-existent. So we can relate in a way.
Well, but I just had to ask that question. Okay, so Doc, let's just wrap this up. What are some of the things that we should be doing as Ghanaians? And again, I'm using because it's Heritage Month, and like it or not, there are things that are unique to us. What are some of the things that we should, even if it's just 3 main things we should be doing to ensure that our occupational health is where it has to be?
Now, it's always a difficult advice to give when it comes to occupational health, because the jobs are not plenty, so if because my first advice, I have to give this one, if your employer is not serious about your health, you have to find a different employer. See, because your job can kill you, and if you allow your current employer to use you and break you down, you will not be able to service the next employer. So you must make sure that you get what you deserve, because it's your right actually to demand that they take care of your health. If they are not going to pay for the health, at least put systems in place to allow you to seek health care as and when necessary. But you are also responsible, because if your chair is broken your chair at work is broken, or it's not ergonomically safe, and you continue using it, your productivity is low, and you are also injuring your back, your spinal cord. So there are people walking around with all sorts of curvatures in their spine, and as a result of these curvatures, they are getting a lot of pain radiating down their legs. Some people can't even function. I'm talking about sexually, since Ghanaians are crazy about sex.
We like it.
Oh yes. I mean, it's a big deal, so you need to take responsibility. And then the second level of responsibility, especially when it comes to obesity, you see, yes, the job must be done. It requires you to be at work for 8 hours, but you don't have to sit down for all that time. If you can take a break every 2 hours to take a walk and come back, it even helps your mental functions. You see, so take a break, walk about. If you can use the stairs, don't use the elevator. If you can walk to the junction, don't get the Uber to your office, get the Uber to the junction. All these are measures you can put in place to help you manage your own weight issues.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelvin Owusu. And of course, he is the head of occupational health and wellness at the Clarion Health International. I mean, look, you talk some more later.
So how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm active on social media, Kelvin Owusu MD. So you can link up with me.
Okay, so that was Dr. Kelvin Owusu. Now we're going to take a short break.